You're listening to Brazen Exchange.
Hello, welcome to Brazen Exchange. I'm your host, Vanessa MID. I hope you had a wonderful week. I did have a wonderful week, if you could count planning, scheduling, meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. If you could count those things as wonderful, then yeah. Well, we always say an idle hand is a devil's workshop, so we thank God for work. We thank God for keeping busy. If you listen to the previous episode, I want to say that you're a superstar. You are a rock star. Please, a round of applause for yourself. I am here clapping for you. Can we cue in the claps? Okay, okay. I hope you heard that. Yes. So you are a superstar. Thank you for joining the conversation. And I saw your comments. I've been reading your comments, and it has warmed and gladdened my soul to see that people, youth especially, are invested in their future because we are the future of work. Moving to the fun stuff. In this episode, I'll be discussing workplace readiness in regards to the future of work. And who better to have this discussion with than with HR? I know what you're thinking, and you're just right. So, dear HR, we have questions and we want you to answer. And I'm sure that our HR will deliver. Enjoy.
You're listening to Brazen Exchange.
For the benefit of our audience, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
My name is Ezinne. I'm a HR professional, strategic HR professional, culture, people champion. I'm all about developing people and making people better versions of themselves. I have 18 plus years of experience in HR across the different spheres of HR, from recruitment to employee relations to performance management, learning and development, the whole 9 yards. I have experience and across diverse industries. So I've been in oil and gas engineering, construction, hospitality, media, and I've also worked globally. So I have cross-cultural experience. Yeah, but yeah, that's basically who I am. I love what I do. I love the fact that, I am able to have a hand in making people, better versions of themselves, developing people to maximize their potential. That's really it.
Let's start with digital economy. You people are in charge of hiring and firing and seeing that all things go well in an organization. So you work with the employees. How are you keeping up with the fact that digital work is now the future? Are you updating your policies? What is that about?
So let me start with do I say a story? Before pre-COVID, I had been a proponent of remote work because I was like, look, a lot of work that you do on site, you can do it remotely, to be honest. Yeah. So I had been a proponent, but then COVID pushed everybody by force, the whole world, to sitting at home. And at that point, I was working somewhere and, we had to update our policies. I mean, before then, we did have some level of remote working, right? But then we went through a change management process where we had to update our policies to suit remote working. And then now, as people are coming out of the impact of COVID, there's a lot of things like, in the Western countries, you're seeing the R2O, the return to office, and then even here. But what has happened is that, in a way to balance things, certain organizations have gone hybrid. So they don't necessarily have to be fully remote, they go hybrid. So I would also relate it to the business I work for. We're not contemporary, we're not the traditional workspace. We do, some of our work is required that you're on site. However, we do have a number of us that are remote. I work remote like 90%. So our policies reflect that. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we have inculcated the need, or what do you call it now? The bringing up of remote work. It's something you cannot avoid. It's there. It's here to stay. So like I said, companies, we have, balanced things out. So you have hybrid work, to cater for those necessary on-site jobs or work, and then the remote workers. So yeah, that's basically it.
I read somewhere, I saw the news about the government gradually shifting towards digital jobs. So they are seeking to partner with foreign countries in order for them to create job opportunities. But now, looking at our graduates, do you think they are equipped to carry out these digital roles? Do you think they are prepared with digital skills?
So the thing about it is that we do have a good number of youth. In fact, if you watch, the gig economy is taken over majorly by the youth. Africa is youth heavy, right? And we're digitally native. So to some extent, they are ready. However, we have the limitations of internet access, cost of internet, even the internet, the bandwidth, because if you're dealing with digital work, remote work, especially if you're working for international organizations, they're used to a certain level of quality of work. And then so you find people, I go online and I read, and people are saying, oh, I couldn't, I was in a meeting, the light went off, and all that, or I cannot afford to, stay online because certain roles require that you're online at particular times and all that. So I would say to some extent they are ready, but then there needs to be some upskilling as well because, AI has come. AI is everywhere and AI is coming at an alarming speed. Things are happening every second, every nanosecond. So how upskilled are youth for that? I'm always, it's very gladdening for me to see young people learning skills like automation, cybersecurity, to be in line with what is going on. But the question is, how many people have access to that? The good thing, though, is that there are people that are sharing this knowledge for free. But then, like I said, there are the limitations of internet access, infrastructure. When we say infrastructure, there's internet, there's lights, there's power. How many people have access to power? People are on different bands. How many people can afford to be on the bands that provide more power? And even those of us that are on the band A, seemingly, how much power do you have access to? So these are the limitations. But I know that the youth are ready, they're hungry, and they just need access to these things to be able to be prepared to a large extent for a digital workforce.
I like that you mentioned upskilling because you find some graduates who they come out and then they discover that the course they studied is, should I say, obsolete. Now they have to take on professional courses, they have to add certifications, all of that just to meet the requirements of today's work realities. So, what technical and soft skills are missing from your experience with graduates or with people you hire? And then how can these youth now learn and apply these skills?
Okay, so one of the things that's dear to my heart that I will speak on, I mean, some other people might differ. They may talk about technical skills, place it up here. I would speak to human skills. And I had this conversation today. I had this conversation with other people. There's a lot of human skills. Well, the young people are lacking in these human skills. And you know why? And I was saying this to people today, and I have said this, I've done a post on this before. People come out, so there's a gap. You come out from school. In school, you're not taught human skills, you're taught the technical skills. And like you said, even some of the technical skills are obsolete. And then you're transitioning into the workplace. Nobody's teaching you social cues, social interaction, how to deal with people, different things, how to function in a workplace. Yeah, there's that gap. And so that there is a need for that. That's why you have young people who can't have conversations. There's awkwardness. Everybody is out there on their phones, because they can't hold a simple conversation. Even in the workplace, they cannot relate with people because they don't understand the dynamics of the workspace. Nobody is teaching them that. So for me, I would say, communication is a skill that people need to learn, young people need to learn. Critical thinking, that is so important. Don't not taking things at face level, but questioning. And you know how our culture is, the African culture, you were groomed not to ask questions, not to ask your elder question. But no, it changes when you grow up. You have to ask, you have to query things. That's how you grow. So that adaptability, resilience. You see young people, they can't, you need to learn resilience because in the workplace, whether it's on site or wherever, you need to have that resilience. So for me, first off, the soft skills, then going to the technical skills. Like I said, we're AI, we say we're global, what do you call it now? Global village. We have to catch up. Yeah. So AI is there. How much of AI are we conversant with? AI is not just ChatGPT. There's a whole lot of world beyond ChatGPT. Like, come on. You know what gladdens me? I go online and I see young people, they are hungry for knowledge. They're learning these things, learning automation, learning AI. learning cloud computing, like I said, cybersecurity and all that. But people need to be upskilled in that. And when you say how did they access these things, this world, the world right now, young people or whoever it is anyway, is at an advantage because you have knowledge at your fingertips. You go on YouTube, whatever you want to learn, you can learn it for free as long as you have the data to learn, right? There's the MOOCs, there's the Udemy's, the Coursera's, the Allisons. Yes, there's some courses that are paid for, but they're also free courses. You can just, start off with that. Take a step. IBM, Google, they offer courses, that you can take. Yes, some of those ones might be paid, but leverage on the ones that are not paid, first of all, before we now move into that. And then that's where employers would then come in and say, okay, you sponsor certifications for your staff, right? You give them that, and then let the learnings as much as possible be micro learnings, because the way things are changing at alarming speed, you may go to study something for 1 year. By the time you're coming out, that thing you've learned is obsolete. So, how do you catch up? So, micro learnings, learning on the spot, things that you can learn in micro bits. And the thing about this generation anyway is that they don't even like that long-term, that bulk learning thing. They like, short spurts of things. So yeah, that, I mean, as employers, we can come in and support, that. But then I always say to people, your learning is in your hands. Anything you learn is yours. Your knowledge is yours. So, start off by taking that. But we also, as employers, have a hand. And that's, especially with regards to soft skills, I'm of the opinion that we need to bridge that gap for the young ones. If they didn't learn it from home, if they didn't learn it, from other places, we have to come in and bridge that gap somehow. Finishing schools or whatever it is, find a way to upskill them in these skills that they're lacking.
Okay, from your experience, looking at the current workforce, do you think that organizations are truly investing in their workforce rather than just employing somebody who is already digitally savvy?
That's a tricky question. I mean, I can look, you would always have companies, not always, but I mean, there are companies that are, training friendly. They want, they would invest in their people because they, at the end of the day, contributes to the bottom line. It increases productivity. The question is, I don't have the data to support, how many companies are doing it. Some companies don't believe in that. They'd rather go out. But the thing about going out is that the people that have those skills, they may not be many. They may be scarce talent, and talent that is hard to fill. They come at a price, right? And now there's global competition, so you're not local organizations are not just you're competing with the global organizations, right? And then the global organizations are pulling talent because of currency dynamics. I read a conversation the other day on X, I think, or was it on X on Threads, where somebody was saying if you earn £3,000 in Nigeria, you would live a comfortable life. I mean, put aside every other thing, health and all that. You would live a comfortable life because how much is $3,000? £3,000 is about 5.8 million or so, thereabout. How many people in Nigeria earn 5.8 million? How many?
Per month.
Now, but exactly, but in the UK, £3,000 is probably not a lot of money, right? So that currency dynamic, right? You have the global organization saying, "I'll pay you 1,500." Some of them may even try to exploit, the talent, but that talent looks at it like, "Wow, I'm earning a lot of money if I convert it." So I think it behoves the African organizations to step up because there is a brain drain that is not without migration. So it's not about, we have the ones that have physically migrated, but we have the ones that have mentally migrated. There is talent migration that does not involve physical migration because you have the people, they will acquire the skills and the international companies are scooping them up. So it behoves us to invest in our people because at the end of the day, when you invest, it's for your own profit. I know some companies say, we invest, and then the person goes on, to another business.
Another
Yeah,
place.
I mean, that's the risk. There's risks in everything, but then you also can leverage on it. I mean, you have things like alumni. Even if the person goes, you can leverage on that alumni. That person can go on and be a brand ambassador for you. Can even bring in other people, that can come in and, so I see profit in investing in your people. That's the long and short of it.
There was something you mentioned about the gig economy, people knowing that I can earn a huge amount of money, I can make money better than working for a local organization. Do you think that rise in gig employment, do you think that that is strengthening, will I say, employee autonomy, or do you think it's weakening job stability?
Weakening job stability. If you talk to us, HR, we are complaining on a daily. You see, people are dealing with attrition. They're like, people are spending more time replacing talent than doing the actual work. I mean, you're doing the work, but there's a lot of time spent on doing the work, especially if you work in an industry that the skill set is something that, international companies can grab onto. So you have a typical employee saying, why are you stressing me? I'm going to come to work 8 to 5, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Then I can sit down in my house and I'm earning a whole lot more because by the time I go out, the transport I will spend, and people are not even treating me well. Yeah, And then I can even do 2 jobs. So I can do it across time zones and I do it from the comfort of my house. So yes, it is weakening job stability. You have HR professionals complaining about this, which is why we need to go beyond just pay. There are other things we can leverage on to create our brand, right? There's some organizations you will say you want to work with. I know that at the end of the day, let's not tell us each other lies. The major reason why people go to work is to make money, right? You're not going to do charity. If that were the case, then don't collect a salary. Yeah. But there are some other factors that can keep you in the workplace. There's this way the company values you or positions you that you say, you know what? Yeah, it's worth it. And I've worked for companies like that, you know what? It's beyond just the money. There's something else that keeps me there. So that's why we need to invest in building a brand, an EVP, that positions us beyond just the money, how much we pay our people.
I like that you mentioned that. So now let's talk about what organizations can do. How can they prioritize employee well-being, right? And still ensure that productivity is carried out even in remote teams?
I'll refer to, the place I was working in when COVID hit and all of us were dealing with that, right? It was a shaking, like nobody had experience of, dealing with that sort of a thing, right? And one of the things that helped us, and I preach about this, is using EAPs, so employee assistant programs. So then they're external consultants, that have expertise in different things. So you have a bunch of counselors or whatever, they will help you in different things, whether it's like financial advice, guidance, it's even mental health, mental guidance, because people where you're holed up in your house. It's like can imagine an adult being, it's like you're under punishment. You can't go outside. So it was dealing with a lot of people's mental health, right? And so we had counselors come in, have sessions with us, and people would be able to vent and say how they feel. So how much are we investing in that? Because the generation of now, they're very big on their mental health. In fact, a young worker now can resign without any other job in view just because of their mental health. It's a toxic workplace. I'm not going to be there, and I'm all for that for them. Good for them. So if you support them in that regard, yeah, if you can, if budget should allow, provide means for therapy for them or counselors, to speak with them, so that they can vent. Then flexible work. We I feel like we've gone beyond this being tight, strict. Oh, you must do 8 to 5, and that's that. There's nothing I want to hear. No, you have to open up your strings or your ropes and make things flexible. There are different ways. I mean, I've worked in places where would have people, okay, fine, you can do half day today. It's not like you're abusing it, but hey, you feel as you can do half day today, or you can work from home tomorrow. There's a way, based on your discretion, you have a way, flexibility around work, to accommodate people. That way people feel the psychological safety, because people want to have that feeling of psychological safety that, okay, the company values me just beyond I'm in there to make money for them. They actually value me as a person. So for me, I would say EAPs, and just, using our discretion to, work around things like work hours, even something as we may see it as little as basic as recognition. You recognize people for what they've done. You might think that it's not a big deal. For some people, it's a big deal, yeah. And give them a voice. Let them feel like they have a representation. If that they are stakeholders in things. I remember that then. Even now, if we're putting together a policy, sometimes we would put it out and ask people, what do you think? What are your views? Have people have a buy-in, so that they feel like, they're part of it. So there are different ways. For me, I always say try as much as possible to have conversations with your people, maybe have focus groups and feel their pulse, figure out what they want, and tweak your policies around their needs as much as you can.
Great that you said that. How can organizations now build culture? See, the thing is, I've always found culture very interesting. Let me give an instance. I once worked in an organization that was 90% remote. 10% we went out for events or meetings with clients, but the remaining we worked from home. During the week, everybody, like our work was mostly like writing, like we wrote and wrote and wrote. Yeah, and then on Fridays, Friday was the check-in and presentation day. So Fridays was the day, like I think it was just set aside just for that. It would come online, everybody, and then everyone would talk about, oh, how was your week? What happened? What were the gaps? What issues did you encounter? And then we had presentation. And presentation, that means during the week, we were told to read 5 articles. So we would read 5 articles. These are articles that show your interest so that when it comes time for presentation day, you can share your interest. So this was also like a way of like bonding with the team. So share your interest. And it was also a way to sharpen our PowerPoint skills because, well, God bless her. Because like my PowerPoint skills now is on point and I can do great designs and all of that presentation. But yeah, like it really helped. But that was our moment to have that. But like that was the culture of that space. And I always look forward to Fridays because I'm like, oh, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday so that I can meet my team, even if it was virtual. So how can organizations build culture in virtual teams?
I think you've pretty much answered it. There has to be rituals, digital rituals that happen, right? I know that in hybrid companies, the remote people, sometimes some remote people tend to feel like, oh, we're the stepchildren, we're not part of this. It feels like the people that are on site is only happening for them and that's it. So, for community's sake, for culture's sake, this thing you said, like I will refer to the company I was in when this thing started, when the need for remote work started. So the team I was a part of, I had met a couple of them, face to face a couple of times. I had traveled to headquarters. But at this time, we had a bigger team. In fact, I had a new boss who I'd never met before. But what happened or what strengthened us, we were such a very strong team. First of all, we started meeting every day because, we're grappling with something that was new, right? But then when we started feeling burnout from too many meetings, we whittled it down to, I think, like twice or once a week. Twice a week, I think. But one of the things that we would do, right? And I even introduced it into my own team here in Nigeria. We would simulate like we were on site. So we would have like water cooler sessions where we would talk about stuff. We're not talking about work. Like when you go to work now, you get to work in the morning, you're just in, hey, do you remember that thing that happened here? So somebody will now say, what did you read about in the news today? We do it online, yeah? Before we now go into work. Then we would have like lunch and learn. You may not, even if the company is not sponsoring us, you bring your lunch and then we're sitting down, we're just in. We would have games. We would do stuff like, okay, show and tell. What's the thing? Show us. Someone say, oh, look at my dog. I just got this dog. This dog, my dog has been, and we're like, oh, and then, tell us something about you that we don't know. And we, like you said, we would look forward to these things. So there was that camaraderie amongst us. We were always looking forward to it. Eventually we had people that were on site, we would still all come together, and have those meetings, even with those of us that were remote. But those are the things that we looked forward to because we knew they were happening. We would look forward to them. And that strengthened us as a team. Then apart from that, at the end of the day, beyond remote, that physical thing, as much as you can, try to have a structured informal gatherings. Maybe you do it once or twice a year or every quarter where you guys all come together and now see each other, because those nuances, those cues that you miss on, remotely, you can now, you meet with the person. So those are things to look forward to. And like I was saying about, people, the remote people not feeling like they're a part of it, even in meetings. When you have meetings, let it not be that someone that is remote hears that they had a meeting and are not part of it. People involve everybody. Everybody should be involved. You call in, you dial in and be part of the meeting. But yeah, beyond all that, creating that culture, you just have to create rituals that, when I say rituals, those are things that you do regularly, that people will look forward to and say, yeah, that's what makes me happy to be part of this team. And of course, when people feel because when you do those things, people feel valued. They feel like they're part of the team. They're, happy. I remember them, we'll have meetings and everybody is eager to say, oh, this is what I did today. I was able to achieve this today. And then we also had what we called kudos. So, you're giving kudos to someone, for helping you. I'm in Nigeria, somebody is in Joburg, someone is in Qatar, and they're saying, oh, isn't it helped me do this? And, so it was regardless of border, so how am I would be happy, somebody else would be happy to come to work because someone has commended them. We're working, across borders. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So I want to talk on this Japa thing, right? Japa has been trending since Enyola Salavi of King of Boys raised her glass to say, welcome to a new dispensation. I remember
Yes.
when that thing was trending on Twitter. My God, I say, Father, when will I also Japa?
Yeah, people have saved it for when they do, and then they'll just post
Yeah.
it like, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. And so they do all of that for several reasons. And a major reason is for job opportunities, right? So how can local companies be the first choice for let's say a digital professional who has other prospects? Like I would rather go for a local company rather than work for a foreign employer. So how can local companies be the first choice for digital professionals?
That's a very hard note because the competition, I mean, how are you going to compare? Even me as HR, if you come to me and say, I'll tell you bye bye and give you blessings. Sorry, laughter aside, but hey, I don't know how you want to compete with that because the truth of the matter is that people move for a number of reasons: financial freedom, exposure. Yeah. Are you able to match how much they're going to give the person? I don't want to, I mean, I don't like to sound very professional and be saying things that are lies. Are you going to be able to match how much they give? But I told you that I talk with my people, my colleagues. We'll sit down and be like, look, there's some resignation when they come. You just tell them, God bless you. I wish you the best because you can't hold the person. What are you holding the person back with? You can't match the money. You know, you can't match the exposure. Because when you find that certain people when they leave the shores of Africa, it's a different exposure altogether. However, there are certain things that that there's also reverse jackpot. People have gone based on certain circumstances, they've gone and they feel like no place like home, right? So I mean, I don't know about matching the money. Maybe some companies can, the bigger companies, maybe the person comes back as an expert in those companies. Maybe that's an option. Offering what do you call it? Making sure that there's psychological safety because people go abroad and they deal with all manners of things that impact their mental health and they feel like there's discrimination, they face certain things like racism or whatever it is. But honestly, it's a hard nut to be able to match or match that competition. If someone is already on their way out, it's very hard though, to match it. I don't know what it's different if the person is in the system, youngin and then is growing and hey, you can hold the person for a certain time, which is why I say, as much as possible, that knowledge, that talent that you're growing, try as much as possible to and put in place succession planning, that there's knowledge that is being shared, right? So that person is grooming someone underneath so that when the person, even if the person has to go, the gap or the vacuum is not much. Because we did see it when there was a lot of jackpot, there were companies that were suffering because there was a huge gap. And it's because one, they were not prepared for that. And one of the ways to prepare for it is through succession planning to an extent. So you have these roles or had to fill roles or key roles that you're preparing other people underneath. So you're investing in those people so that it's like kind of like they're handing the baton over to the next person. Yeah, who knows? That other person may leave too, but just keep your succession cycle active.
Okay. Thank you so much. My God, really, it was a time. Moving to our employers, the people who put our bread. What kind of leadership mindset now do they need in order for them to build a future-ready organization in Africa?
They have to be digitally upskilled. Leadership has to be digitally upskilled. The way you lead people on site is different from the way you lead people, remotely. We need to move away from this always on mindset. You know how it is, like, they want to see you in the office. You must be there presenting. Meanwhile, the person that is there is watching Netflix. So you just need the person to be there, but the person is not doing any work. We need to move from that to outcome-based performance. So it's not about how many days or how long the person shows up. Yeah, the person can be there and do overtime, is not doing anything. But what's the outcome that person gives? And I'm big on that. You can work 3 days of the week, but just give me you meet the deliverables, fantastic, right? So we need to move from that, and that many of our leaders, or quite a number of our leaders, are setting that way. And so we need to recognize that it's not like that anymore, right? It's you don't have. I was reading a thread where people were joking. This was in America. They were joking about, oh, make sure your Microsoft Teams button is on orange. And they were laughing, that make sure it doesn't go to red, because you have this excessive monitoring. No, we can't. You can't. You're creating a culture of fear, and under a culture of fear, you reduce productivity. But when you create that culture of you trust your people, so that there's that trust, but you just need to show people that they can trust. You trust them, and when you show that you trust them to do the work, they will reward that trust with giving you quality work. So we need to move to the point of being digitally skilled. So, and even like things as simple as onboarding. I've done posts on this. Even on-site onboarding, some people get it wrong. Now imagine someone resumes remotely because you assume that it's remote. No, you have to take the person through, like the person has joined your company, take the person through an onboarding session. Let the person feel like they are part of, the system. Let the person feel recognized. And then we also need to, not treat remote workers like they're, you forget them and just, we have somebody there working. They have to be a part of the system. Let them know so that they feel like they have a voice, involve them. Yeah. But yeah, the leaders need to understand that it's not the same rodeo with the on-site workers. That it requires a different level of skill to have remote teams or even hybrid teams.
You're listening to Brazen Exchange.
I'm introducing you now to a segment called Brazen Choices. And this is a mini game of Would You Rather. This is where I present two options to you, and then you tell me which one you'd rather go for. Okay. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
People first or performance first remote work?
See, I'm a people advocate. I go for the people because when you concentrate on the people, when you put the people first, then you get the productivity. For me, it's like what has it, the egg before the chicken. That's how it is for me.
What about employee potential or proven experience?
That's a tough one, but it's a tough one because if I'm employing someone, yes, I would. That it depends on. For me, I would say it depends on in the situation and depends on the role. There are certain roles that it's proven experience I would need though. However, there are certain roles and there are certain people that I see they present themselves and it's potential. So it would be a mix of some sort. I have been in interviews where I've spoken to people. I have, skill set in a particular area. I've proven to them, but then in other areas, I have potential. So based on that, I may not have everything, but they're like, okay. And truly, the way the world is right now, people are more on skill based. In fact, the world is moving away from degree first. Like, yeah, your degree good, but skill first. And you find that the people that are getting jobs are the people that can prove, that they can do the job. So yeah, show me that you can do the job because I don't know that I have the time. How much time do I have to wait for you to reach your potential? So, like I said, it depends on the role and the individual.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Talent retention or talent acquisition?
Do you just bring people in and you just throw them to the wolf? So I am big on talent retention. What are you doing? That talent you brought in, how are you harnessing it? How are you developing that talent to be better than it was when it came in? So I would say talent retention.
Flexible digital policies or structural digital policies?
I'll say flexible digital policies because things are moving, things are fluid right now, things are dynamic. So you cannot set things in stone. With the way things are now, it's not traditional. So yeah, you have to leave room for flexibility. I'm all for flexibility.
And then the last one, reporting violations or walking away.
No, we will not sweep things under the carpet. Oh, me, I will face things head on. Let's face it head on. Even if eventually you walk away because maybe you feel like you can't work in that space or whatever. Hopefully we don't get to that. But by all means, reports. Please report. We don't sweep things under the carpet here. No, report the violations.
And that's about it for this segment. Eshe, thank you. And so, for your final words, what is your hope for the future of work in Africa?
Right now, a question was raised that, is Africa, is it even ready, in terms of policies and all that? And our policies don't support, digital work because they're very traditional, structured. Everything is tied to location, certain things, payroll, strict and all that. But I look forward to when, there's an opening up, there's a recognition of the fact that this thing is upon us. We cannot avoid it. We can't, it's not something we can run away from, right? So we need to open up our laws, our labor laws to accommodate these things because the gig workers, the remote workers do not have cover, right? They're exposed and we owe it to them to expose. You talked about them comparing vis-a-vis Africa, work in Africa. So we need to have, protection in place, embedded in our policies to protect the gig workers because they are a part of us. Some of us are part gig workers, some are fully gig workers. It impacts a number of us. So let's not wait until let's not be reactive, let's be proactive, to set our policies in place to accommodate this wave that has come upon us. So I look forward to having remote digital friendly policies that protect the worker, and encourage the workers because at some point I think, and which is people have predicted, at some point the people that have jackpot might eventually come back, come back home. If things are, and you hear people that have jackpot that say if things were favorable here, then because of because of how things are, they can do their work from anywhere, to be honest, but things are not favorable. So I look forward to when policies are favorable enough to accommodate people to work from wherever they want to work, even if it's home that they choose to work from.
Thank you so much. It has really a delight having you and hearing your opinion, your professional expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for having me. Thank you.
This series was funded by Africa No Filter. The stories and conclusions shared within are those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the positions or policies of Africa No Filter. Till next time on Brazen Exchange, I'm your host, Vanessa Imadi. Goodbye.